Everything seemed perfect. A quiet neighborhood, friendly faces, and a helpful neighbor always ready to lend a hand. But sometimes the person you trust the most is the one you should fear. Because no one ever knows when the real door opens to horror. In the golden heart of Ojumba village, where the sun kissed the earth with warmth and the moon whispered secrets to the rivers, lived a young woman named Adanna. Her hands knew the rhythm of work before they knew the softness of rest. Orphaned young, she swept the grand palace of Chief Obadil, the wealthiest man in 3 kingdoms. They called her Nwanyala, the ground woman, because she moved with the silence of dust and left no trace. Each day, she cleaned the chief's compound while nobles passed her like wind, never once stopping to look. But Adanna was no ordinary cleaner. The spirits of her ancestors stirred within her. Her mother had once whispered, "You are the drum they will one day dance to." On the night of the new moon, a feast was held in the palace. Royals from far lands came, and Adanna, as always, swept the corners unnoticed. But as the drummers played and laughter filled the air, a voice unlike any other stopped her broom mid-sweep. Who is she? It was the prince, Obinna, son of the chief, just returned from the lands beyond the sea. And in that single moment, the earth beneath Adanna's feet shifted. Adanna froze like a gazelle sensing a lion, not from fear but from shock. Never had anyone in the palace addressed her, let alone the prince himself. Obinna's eyes, sharp like an eagle's yet warm as morning fire, held hers. "She is one of the sweepers, my prince," said a guard, waving his hand dismissively. But Obinna stepped closer. "Does the broom hide her name?" Adanna's voice trembled. "I am Adanna, son of the chief." The drumming outside faded from her ears. All she could hear was the pounding of her own heart. Obinna studied her. Not just the dust on her wrapper or the calluses on her hands, but something deeper, older, unspoken. "My mother used to say," Obinna murmured, "that sometimes the sun hides in a clay pot." Then he turned to the elders and said something no one expected. "She will serve me at tomorrow's council." Gasps flew like birds from every corner of the room. A cleaner. At the prince's side. But Obinna had made his choice. Adanna bowed, her eyes lowered, but inside her chest, her spirit rose like a hawk catching the wind. That night the stars above Ojumba blinked brighter, for they too saw a new story beginning. By dawn, the whispers had already grown wings. In the market, women paused their grinding to murmur, "Did you hear? The prince chose a cleaner." In the palace, servants stole glances at Adanna as she walked, no longer with a broom, but with a water bowl and a silk cloth, symbols of a personal attendant to royalty. She had barely spoken a word since the night before, yet her silence roared louder than drums. Her grandmother's spirit echoed in her heart. "Walk like the wind, quiet but full of power." The council chamber was heavy with incense and pride. Elders wrapped in leopard skins sat in circles, their eyes skeptical as Adanna entered beside Obinna. But the prince's voice carried weight. "She will sit beside me not because of her birth," he said, "but because of her spirit." The elders grumbled, but none dared challenge him openly. Adanna listened, learned, and when asked to speak, her words were few but wise. Even the oldest councilman nodded slowly. That evening, as she walked past the same path she once swept, children followed her barefoot footsteps, singing, "Adanna the silent, who speaks like thunder." The girl who was once unseen had begun to cast a shadow of greatness. Days turned like the pages of an old drum song, and Adanna's place beside the prince became more than a whisper. It became a truth carved into the village's bones. She no longer slept on the reed mats behind the palace kitchen. A room was prepared for her within the inner walls, where moonlight fell gently through carved windows. But comfort did not change her. Each morning she still rose before the cocks, washing her face at the well, nodding to old Ma'ama who once shared her millet. But envy is a shadow that follows rising suns. Lady Nenna, daughter of a war chief and betrothed to Prince Obinna by promise, returned from the northern hills. Her eyes were sharp, her tongue sharper. "She is a servant," Nenna spat. "You cannot crown a broom." Obinna replied, calm but firm. "Then you do not know the strength of what cleans the dirt." A test was called, a challenge of wisdom, tradition, and spirit. Both women would sit before the oracle of Umu, who spoke truths only the ancestors could hear. Adanna stood before the sacred tree, heart steady. She did not fear spirits, after all, she carried one within her. And the drums began to beat. In the dimming light of the evening, the village gathered, murmurs of the past few days hanging thick in the air. The killer, no longer hiding, stood before the people, his face a mask of resignation. The haunting silence was broken by the elder's voice, steady and calm, as he recounted the old tales of vengeance and justice that had circled their land for generations. The crowd's eyes never left him, their judgment sharper than any blade. With a slow, deliberate motion, the killer dropped his knife. The years of terror, the lies, the deaths, everything unraveled in that moment. He had become what he feared most, consumed by his own twisted nature. "Justice has a way of catching up," the elder said softly, stepping forward. "Tonight it catches you." As the sun finally sank beneath the horizon, the village moved forward, forever changed by the shadows of what had happened. Some would remember the killer, others would forget, but all would carry the weight of the story, for in every tale a lesson waits to be learned.